have never been alone in this journey.
Never,
We've been
yes,
so
never.
supported, and we are, we're such a small part of this, really.
We didn't change history, we rectified history. And this is a victory for Bristol, this is a victory for racial equality, and this is a victory for anyone who wants to be on the right side of history.
So they rectified history, Shay?
For a lot of people of colour, they will say they absolutely did rectify history. We know that Edward Colston has been very divisive. It's important to say that all four of these individuals have gone through the courts, our British courts of law, and they've been found not guilty. And so on the basis of that, this is now going to open up a wider discussion around many other statues that are here dotted across London and the country, which also represent white supremacy. And of course, for Edward Colston, you were talking about the slave trade. So I think for people of colour, this is definitely seen as a step in the right direction. What is a shame is the fact that Bristol Council did not listen to the thousands of people who signed petitions and asked for this to be taken down the right way. Shouldn't have to be that people have to take to the streets, protest and rip down statues. I don't think that's what we should be doing, but what are the public meant to do when our own elected politicians, when our local MPs, our councilmen and women do not listen to us?
And the principle established here, Andrew, is that if something is offensive, racially offensive, you can damage it. That's the principle, right?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think it's a very worrying principle. Look, the court system works the way it does. This was a jury of 12 men and women. They reached their majority verdict. But it seems to me that the people who were on trial weren't the four people who destroyed a statue and hurled it in a canal. The person who was on trial was Edward Colston. And I'm sorry, he shouldn't have been on trial. We know who he is, a noted philanthropist who made his money from the slave trade, the wicked slave trade. Lots of people did make money from the slave trade. But this court case was not about Colston. It was about, did these four people commit an act of criminal damage? And anyone looking at those videos will see that's exactly what they did. Now, Shay makes a great point about Bristol Council. Why didn't they do something about it? I will make the point. In 2016, Bristol Council had their first directly elected black mayor. He's called Marvin Rees, described again and again as Britain's first African descent elected mayor. Why didn't he do something about it? Now, he's been complaining, he's been welcoming the fact the statue's been torn down. He had 4 years in which to get rid of that statue. There were all sorts of democratic procedures he could have used. He could have had a public consultation, which is the way he should have done it. And in my view, that statue should have been removed, put in a museum with a plaque next to it explaining this man's background. While he did good things with his money, he created schools and almshouses. He made that money on the back of the slave trade, which was wicked and evil. But I don't think the answer is to allow four people, because they don't like something, to tear it down because it sets a precedent that others may go to. Some people think Sir Winston Churchill was racist over the famine in parts of India in the 1930s. Is he going to be next?
Well, that's the worry, Shay, isn't it? They say, well, OK, Winston's next.
Yeah, Andrew, I think that's a very interesting point that you raise. I think actually what needs to happen now as a result of this verdict is we need to really reach out to the general public, and find out what should be done for these divisive figures and statues right across the country, which do hold a lot of offence for people of colour, but also not just people of colour. It's interesting here that you see the Colston Four. All four of them are British and white. They understand that this history in this country, sadly, is tainted, and we need to do something about it. And if the general public decide at the end of this there are statues that need to be in museums, whether that is Winston Churchill or Edward Colston, I think it's down to the country as a whole now to decide. For us, this generation of Brits, including myself, a second-generation British woman who is also South Asian, to say we need to look at our history, what was wrong within our history in terms of the British Empire and also in terms of slavery, and actually rectify it. It is absolutely right to rectify it, by actually holding up a mirror to society and saying, racism existed, this is our past, this is what has happened. It will allow us to heal and move forward.
Okay.